Robert French is a proud son of Western Australia and had a reputation as a fine jurist, including Chief Justice. He found that there was a problem with free speech on Australian campuses. The Drew Pavlou case became notorious, as did the vilification and pursuit of Peter Ridd. Do you think we've got a real problem with freedom of speech on our campuses in Australia? And before you embark on that, I want to throw another thing to you. I've read a lot of your material in The Spectator. The attempt to assault JK Rowling, including by some so-called feminists, over her remarks about transgenderism. Did you find that absolutely staggering? I noticed in your budget column for The Specky, you said it's a bit tough for the sisterhood to go on about a misogynist budget when they can't agree on a definition of womanhood. Take as long as you like.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is up until that point, JK Rowling was an absolute darling of the left. But you only have to put one foot wrong. And the one thing that we have seen in 2020 is that it has been the year where hypocrisy and rampant tribalism have just reigned supreme. And the problem with something like the comments made by JK Rowling is the goalposts keep moving. And no person knows on any given day whether what they say is going to be okay or whether what they say is going to get them piled on and doxed and what have you. And that there is a big problem in our language, in our culture, and in our respect for the views of other people, whether we agree with them or not. Now, going to Justice French, and he prepared a code for free speech, which I understand went out to all the universities, I think 20-odd universities, and it's only been accepted by 7 or 8. That is a huge problem.
That's correct.
That is a huge problem. Now, universities are meant to be robust places. They're meant to be places of ideas and argument and improving on what we already know. So we can't have dogma in universities. We can't. We need to always be prepared to push the boundaries, to think differently. And you know what? You can consider other people's views without necessarily taking them on yourself. But we need to have more respect for the views of other people. I've got plenty of friends across the political spectrum. I've got plenty of friends who vote Labor. And that's okay. You know what? They're still decent people. We may not agree politically, but they are still decent people. And we need to get back to that point because the situation that we have got to, where this, like I said before, this rampant tribalism, this moving of what is appropriate or not appropriate, or what is woke enough, that there is creating a huge issue. And the problem is that moves opinions, or it moves thought content to the very far left and the very far right. And the fact of the matter is most people occupy somewhere in the middle. Everyone feels, or everyone in the middle who doesn't necessarily have a platform feels they don't have a voice and feels as though that they can't express themselves because they do not know what objection is going to come from where and how brutal it's going to be.
Well, indeed. And Bronwyn, just on Justice French, I'd like to go back to that for one moment. There were 2 appointments made to the High Court by this government. And I don't know about you, but I felt there was a golden opportunity to appoint capital C Conservatives went begging. I'll be quite open with it. I would have thought Guy Reynolds was a lay-down misere for one of those appointments. I don't know what possessed the Cabinet to sign off on those 2 appointments. I thought it was disappointing. And it begs the question, I raise a couple of issues with you because you've been in the Cabinet room. I'd like to get your sense of the aliens decision that was handed down early this year, that Love and Tom case, and whether you think that opportunity was missed. And in light of that, do you have any confidence that this Cabinet is capable of delivering guarantees for religious freedom to avoid Folau cases?
Well, that's certainly a bagful, if I can say, Catherine. But let me say, the old High Court, one sort of had a sense of how it behaved, how it would come to its conclusions, and that developed over a period of time. This current court, I don't think we've got any indication except for that case you mentioned, and of course the Section 92 case, about how it's going to settle, shall we say. Now, there's another appointment to be made, and there are plenty of people who trust it will be a more black letter judge, shall we say. You can go through various high courts and see the dominant personalities and which way it went and who did dissenting decisions and which ones then ultimately worked their way up to become majority decisions. So the problem is, I think, with this court is we don't have any idea which way it's going to settle. I suspect that it will be an appointment that will be better accepted. But I just want to, if I can, before I
Please
go into the rest of that, I'd just like to comment on a couple of things that Caroline was saying.
Please.
If we're really getting into the world of ideas, if we're really going to fight for the things that we believe in, for me, free enterprise, individualism, and to speak out against socialism and Marxism, then I cannot and will not respect those ideas. I may tolerate them, but I will certainly fight for the right for people to express them. Just as in this country, I must be able to say things which will offend other people. They can tolerate what I say, but I must be able to say them. So it's a very difficult question to say that universities should be a place of freedom of speech and freedom of ideas if there's not a willingness to engage and actually thrash it out and insult each other too while you're at it. It can't be a bar. You can't be expected to be polite little nothings while trying to say something about which you believe passionately. No, it was, if you look at the way in which you begin to see the creeping of socialism into these institutions. I mean, Fabianism was the pattern, wasn't it? George Bernard Shaw, a founder, saying, as he said right at the beginning, that every individual must be forced to justify their existence to the state. And if they can't do that, they should be eliminated kindly. He even suggested using a gas to do it. Now, the point is that if we allow that creeping sort of intellectualism to go through and to, over the period of time, Fabianism is to do it gradually, and then they have literally crept through our institutions since the collapse of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the USSR. And when President Bush Sr. said, we're going to have a peace dividend. Well, we didn't. What we got was a Marxist march. So we really have a big fight on our hands. And all these things creeping through our institutions, attacking the things that we hold dear, whether it's the church, whether it's our armed forces, we have to be vigilant and speak out. So it's not a question of respect. It's a question of tolerate, to allow people to speak. And if you find you can't tolerate the intolerable, then your voice has to become louder because you have to be able to argue the better case. So back to your question.
Go ahead, please.
No, fine. You were going to say.
No, I just have a sense that the core constituency of the coalition is growing impatient on some of these very important symbolic issues. I know there was some rumblings about those High Court appointments, and I think the religious freedom legislation, I've had George Christensen on this week, Dan Tehan also, I think there may be some underestimation on the part of the PM and his Attorney General about how much that matters to people.
Well, it does matter to people, but the difficulties of trying to entrench religious freedom is an enormous one, if you look at it. You can entrench things that may have consequences that you haven't even thought about. It's a very dangerous path. But I understand where George Christensen comes from, and I did take part in the debate which occurred back in 1988 when there was an attempt to change the Constitution to entrench a mini Bill of Rights. And I fought very hard against that entrenchment because I don't think it serves the individual and individual freedoms well, and we were successful in defeating that mini Bill of Rights on very good grounds. I won't go into some of the debates that took place, but we all wrote papers about why it was so important. And there is a protection for religious freedom in the Constitution, even though it isn't as fulsome as some people would like. But it is a very difficult case to go. But I do think people are very, very, very concerned about appointments to the High Court. I think you're quite right.